Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for August 11, 2021, the Declination edition. And we begin with that story from Dylan Tokar at the Risk and Compliance Journal at the Wall Street Journal. The SEC said it intends to close an investigation into potential bribery violations by Pactiv Evergreen. Earlier this week, we had a similar announcement by the Department of Justice. The probes resulted from Pactiv Evergreen's voluntary disclosure last September of an internal investigation that found employees had occasionally given gift cards to government regulators and employees of state-owned enterprises in China. These gifts were determined to be non-material and individually and in the aggregate, and appear to have been provided at times of Chinese holidays for generalized goodwill purposes only, according to the internal investigation report. So good news from Pactiv Green. It certainly would be nice if the DOJ could somehow change its policy on declinations and release information about them, as it would be a great guide for the compliance practitioner going forward. Next up, from the New York Times Deal Book, Wall Street is increasing salaries to help deal with burnout. So once again, by throwing money at younger first-year analysts and other associates, they're hoping that this will help prevent burnout. But if you're burned out from working 100 hours a week, I don't think $10,000 a week extra is going to do much more for you. So once again, the Wall Street solution of just throwing money at problems and hoping they go away is in play. Next up from The Guardian, foreign officials and corrupt business people are now targeted under changes to Australia's sanctions powers. These new sanctions powers, announced by the Australian government on Thursday and expected to be presented to Parliament by the end of the year, will allow Australia to target perpetrators of egregious acts of international corruption. The powers are likely to spark calls from the coalition backbenchers for sanctions against Chinese officials over human rights abuse, but will also allow Australia to expand sanctions on individual and entities for serious corruption, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and malicious cyber activity. So more perhaps coming from Australia. And finally, from the Wall Street Journal, they asked the question, do colleges need an anti-cheating czar? This is not in response to Varsity Blues, but from enhanced cheating that's gone on during the pandemic. And as pressure to perform and lack of oversight were in place, and even what is termed a, quote, misunderstanding of what constitutes cheating, this could lead to colleges putting in place additional requirements much beyond what many of us have known as the honor code. So there could be some changes coming to the college scene, particularly if universities and colleges start filling a position of the anti-cheating czar. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.